I'm not fondly.
Okay. Look, Charlotte Leslie is going, so that's the reason that I would, I'm happy to stay here till gone midnight. Okay, look, I've got. We can discuss afterwards. Okay, so I'm just making it clear. That's the situation. On the question of, I think Charlotte is under one thing. I think Charlotte is misplaced, and when I look around the room, the few people I know here is that we're all somehow Labour Party members and we're Labour Party supporters. I wasn't a Labour Party member. I'm not a Labour Party member, and I certainly went on a lot of protests against Mr. Tony Blair on a whole range of issues and on voting rights. And may I add, quite a lot of Labour Party members did so as well, and they were actually disgusted about what was happening. I did see one Tory who went on a protest of the library. It was Mr. Cameron's agent, wasn't it? He went on protest to keep his library open in his constituency and was very successful. There you are. The interesting thing is, when I hear a Tory bemoan leaders and heads and the top boss on £500,000 a year and how awful it is and dreadful it is, I agree. But I don't stop that at the public sector, you see. I think it's actually outrageous that people who run banks that got us into this problem are given billions and millions of pounds of bonuses. It seems that it's only unfair if it's in the public sector, bash them. And I'm all for bashing the public sector bosses, don't get me wrong. I'm all for it. They are well overpaid. Let's redistribute their wealth. I'm sure the leader of councils who are Tory party members share your view, Charlotte, and will no doubt, the ones who are party members, will no doubt redistribute their wealth accordingly to the home help service which they run. Secondly, if the Tories are that serious about the tax evasion and tax avoidance of the super rich, why are they sacking tax inspectors? Why then do they lay off and sack the people who are trying to sort out the question of unpaid tax? And the reality is they're doing that because they don't give a damn that the rich don't pay much tax. In reality, that they avoid, they think it's right that they do that. Because what we hear is, if they're forced to pay the tax that they have and should pay, they'll leave the country. Now think of this terrible scenario. Fred Goodwin. If we'd made him pay his tax, Charlotte, he'd have left the country. What a disaster that would have been for Britain plc. It would have been awful if he left the country. But on a serious point, Tesco's, £1 billion is avoided in paying tax because they siphon money through the Cayman Islands. I don't know who runs Tesco's, I don't really care. But I know one thing. They cannot take Tesco's from down the road or up on Kellaway Avenue. They can't pack it in a bag and take it to Gatwick Airport and say, I'm off. Tesco's remains. The reason Tesco makes a profit is because the stores are in this country and people go there all too often. That's why they do it. Because the majority of goods which are sold in, which are made in Britain, services, are actually inside Britain, is the honest truth, or inside the EEC. So the notion, it's not true that no companies move abroad, or none of this doesn't ever happen, but it is massively exaggerated as a way of telling working class people, don't resist. You can't get away with it. They will do terrible things. They will move. We'll never survive. Corporation tax in the United States is higher. Is higher than in Britain. The way in which it's put, the lower the corporation tax, the better it is. I'll give you the two lowest in Europe: Ireland and Iceland. What a great example of low corporation tax economies. It's been so brilliant in Ireland. It's been a rip-roaring success. It really has. And now you see, and it's a warning to us, this is the 5th round of austerity in Ireland. The 5th round. And I tell you what, there is all the indications that we are going to go into a double-dip recession. There is all the indications. To be honest, I hope we don't, because the people who will suffer that will be working-class people. But I'll tell you this, if we go into that double-dip recession, this will not be the end of it. They will come back for another year, 2-year, 3-year wage freeze, another hike in your pension contributions, another hospital will hit the dirt. And the notion of privatisation as an answer. One of the terrible things in the NHS was the privatisation of cleaning services. When I worked in a hospital in Cardiff, I saw what the wages those women were on. It was poverty wages. That's what the women who struggle with. And they cut staff. And where do we get? Do we get clean hospitals? Super clean hospitals? We get hospitals where you probably get more ill going in than you coming out when you go in. Because precisely because contracts were privatised. Last couple of moments. You see, the strategy, it seems, with the Tories is massive attack on the welfare state, dismantle the NHS, and a massive attack on working class living standards. This raises a sinking of demand, which is a real problem, and it's a real problem Mervyn King, etc., from the right, from the ruling class's point of view, actually has identified. There is a problem. The answer, we're told, is export. We've got to export, export, export. The problem is, Germany says, we've got to export, export, export. France says, we've got to export it. They're all saying it. And what we see, and I think it's one of the horrible things I saw, there was, I mean, I sort of laughed when I saw Cameron and Tahrir Square in Cairo. The notion that he was supporting the revolution against Mubarak is frankly absolute farce. They loved Mubarak, as did Blair. They loved Mubarak, and they armed him. They said he was a strong man and a man of peace. And we saw the reality. And then we see Cameron go into Kuwait. He suddenly declared Kuwait was a democracy, which is an odd description to me. But then he was on his way. He was talking about freedom. He actually said the following words: "We were wrong to think Muslims couldn't have the vote." I'm sorry, Mr. Cameron. Some of us always thought that Muslims should have the vote in the Middle East or anywhere else part of this world. It was a dreadful thing, admission in many ways. But he talked about we shouldn't prop up dictators, we were wrong. And do you know where he was going? An arms fair. He was going to an arms fair to sell the weapons, to promote the sale of weapons to the King of Bahrain. In the Saudi, yesterday there was a demonstration in which the police opened fire on people asking for the vote. And I would challenge to Charlotte Leslie is, do you think we should be selling arms to the Saudi royal family to open fire on their very own people? The last point is this. I believe there is a... I mean, the interest of this debate to me is, if I'm honest, Charlotte, is it started off, you know, it was all very nice, whatever, but it started off like that. And in the end, it was, the trouble is there's people out there who don't want to work and they're on benefit. And in the end, you're a wet nurse. The real face of the Tories come out, I'm afraid. You know, it's the honest truth. Because when you have a government which is laying millions of people off, they always try to pretend it's their own fault. When I left school in 1980, there was mass unemployment. It was a terrible ideological barrage from the press about the lazy swines. It must be a thing in Britain that every 10 or so years people go, "Oh, sod this. I've got a job, I can't be bothered. I just sit at home on the benefits, you know. It's really good." 2 years later, when the economy picks up, "Oh, I've got to go back to work now." It doesn't make any sense. Last point, honest. Last point is this. The history of the Tory party is this. When people struggled for the vote, they opposed it. When men struggled for the vote, they opposed it. Said they weren't going to back down. When women struggled for the vote, they opposed it, said they wouldn't back down. When people tried to create trade unions, right? They opposed it, and they said they wouldn't back down. Every major advance in this society that we have made, the Tory party have A, opposed it, and say they're not going to give in. And actually, the major ones we've won. All right? Thank God. Thank God. Right? They are a party of the super rich and rule for the super rich. That is their raison d'etre. Right? There's my Latin. I saw you had a speech saying, it's a shame in state school they don't have Latin. Right? We have it in private schools. But, yeah. Right? Well, I tell you, I don't know. I mean, it's not Latin. I did Latin in my comp. That's a terrible, terrible shame. But I tell you what, forget the Latin. I'd like the 10 kids per teacher in the state schools, wouldn't you? Like they haven't eaten. That's the class divide for you. And the last point is this. We are going on the demonstration on the 26th. I want everybody here to come on the demonstration, get involved. We cannot sit and put up with this any longer. And the reality around the world, I everlasting on this, Charlotte, I saw that one of your favourite people is Bob Dylan, and I'm a Bob Dylan fan. I named my son after Dylan. Okay. The times, they are a-changing, and we're not going to be pawns in the game any longer.
Right, okay, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming to the debate, and I would also like to thank the speakers as well. So if you could just...